Welcome to our PechaKucha presentation on the virtual international trips, promoting cross-cultural learning and global citizenship at home. At the Graduate School of Education and Psychology at Pepperdine University, doctoral students have the privilege to partake in an experiential course intended for students to travel to an international destination. Through an examination of economic, socio-political, cultural, and historical literature, as well-structured personal reflections of the participants, students use 6 filters through which they will examine a number of characteristics of the host country and develop a research-informed meta-narrative for the countries they visit.
However, the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated the shift to online learning experiences across all higher ed institutions. One such experience was our international trips. Thus, we needed to consider how do we translate these experiential learning trips into a virtual format while ensuring the learning outcomes are being met. We are blessed to have a brilliant ID team, faculty, and support of our leadership to design and finalize an action plan. The COVID-19 pandemic restrictions were increasing, and on-ground international travel was beginning to be out of the question. Thus, we needed to consider the necessary resources such as cost, time, course objectives, and planning to make this trip happen. In the end, we made a decision to organize a fully virtual international trip. The ID team, IT, faculty leaders, and senior leadership took on the challenge of figuring out the logistics for a fully virtual international trip. It took multiple meetings to figure out the pieces and a plan of action on how to make those pieces fit. Now, we started putting the pieces together. Multiple spreadsheets were created to organize and document the information. We created Zoom links for each country and a faculty trip leader for each destination. Each Zoom was monitored and supported by a member of the ID and IT team. A program agenda with each Zoom link was created and distributed to students, faculty, and staff. In addition, the faculty curated leaders with experience in their respective countries. This was an extensive process that required consistent communication and meticulous planning. Each speaker was offered a time slot, and we had to ensure the speakers reflected one of the 6 perspectives because the purpose of the international trips must be translated to the online format. In the end, the virtual international trip took place over 3 days with multiple keynotes and dignitaries, all held on Zoom. All staff and faculty members supporting the event arrived early to the office to make sure everything was set up. Students were provided with an in-depth itinerary that showed the speakers of the day and were given a survey at the end for feedback. Once the virtual trip was finished, we reflected on the challenges and successes of this debut experience. Some of the challenges were the intensity of the planning, the resources required, and the sustainability. But our successes were the students were very appreciative of having this experience and found it to be meaningful and well thought out as an alternative for the international trip. Fast forward to 1 year later, and we found ourselves considering the same question: do we host another virtual trip? Thankfully, the travel restrictions were not as strict as before, and we were allowed to host on-ground trips. However, there were a few points to consider, such as the increased number of students and if all the students would feel comfortable traveling so soon. In the end, students were able to attend Egypt, Belize, Costa Rica, the UAE, or the virtual trip. We included this virtual option to give students who have concerns about traveling or have health issues an opportunity to stay home. Thus, students were given a choice to attend one in-person session or participate in the virtual option. Now it was time for planning part 2. With a smaller support team, no IT this time, we followed a similar process of organizing speakers and documents to generate an agenda that covered the 6 perspectives. We also hosted a pre-trip meeting to establish the general rules and decorums of the trip and answer any questions the students may have had. In addition to the speakers, we sought to include a more immersive technological experience. Thus, the ID team developed a gamified immersive VR quest for students to complete during their virtual trip. The goal was to provide an immersive experience to emulate the feeling of traveling to the UAE, and there was a variety of activities such as VR videos and drag and drop actions. The quest was designed in a gamified format to engage and immerse the learners. Each module reflected one of the 6 perspectives and consisted of a variety of learning activities. In association with the activities, students needed to reflect on the content and answer a check for understanding portion to unlock the next stage, and at the end, receive their certificate of completion. As always, we sought feedback to further improve on the quest and the virtual experience. Students appreciated the gamified approach to learning and found the resources to be helpful and that scaffolded approach to be an immersive learning experience for them. But they did feel that time was limited and wish that they had more time to work on the quest and explore all the resources. Just like last year, we wanted to make sure that the speakers and the quests we developed were aligned with the 6 perspectives. Again, the purpose of this course is for students to examine the host country, in this case the UAE, through the lens of these filters and develop a research-informed meta-narrative for the country that they visit, whether it was in person or virtual. Just like the first iteration of this experience, the second international trip did not come without its challenges and successes. First being we had a much smaller team to work with because the in-person trips were happening at the same time. However, students really appreciated the immersive experience and were happy that they were given an option to attend virtually and feel like they went to the UAE with their peers. In the end, we had students attend a post-trip meeting to reflect as a group and share their experiences. Students were broken up into random groups with a collection of students who traveled to all the different countries, and they generated a 5-minute presentation to share with the class on what they gleaned from their peers' experience in their selected country. While we don't know if we'll do a virtual trip again, there were multiple key takeaways gleaned from this experience, such as the amount of resources needed to facilitate a virtual trip, as well as the importance of immersion. These takeaways are excellent points for reflection as we prepare for a future and adapt to a life where virtual options are no longer an exception, but a norm. With international travel disrupted during the COVID-19 pandemic, we developed virtual international trips to uphold our commitment to global leadership and change. Building off our successful international travels in the past, we created this online experience with the goal of providing our students with an authentic and experiential travel learning experience. Thank you all for watching.